I set out at the beginning of this video with a mission. Diagnose, as I usually do, why good thing became bad. But after scripting this out and doing some research, I realized a true analysis of Big Mouth is actually a lot more complicated than what I'm giving it credit for, and you'll see what I mean in a moment. But before we start, I just wanted to thank Liquid IV for partnering with me for today's video. If you're looking to step up your hydration game, Liquid IV is a great place to start. I have some of their products with me here at home. This is their hydration multiplier. There are these cute little electrolyte mixes that come in these little powders. You put them in your water. They come in all kinds of flavors. I like the passion fruit one, which is what I have here. They keep you super hydrated throughout the day, especially if you drink a lot of water like me. The other one that I want to show you is the immune support drink mix. If you have a dog shit immune system like me, this stuff is great. I used to drink a lot of Emergency back in the day because I knew I had a dog shit immune system, and this makes it a lot more of a pleasurable experience than that, so I would definitely recommend it. If you're looking to make one of your New Year's resolutions to drink more water, once again, Liquid IV is a great place to get started. You can use my discount code in my bio for more information. You can get up to 20% off of your order, and thank you once again to Liquid IV for partnering with me and for helping my channel thrive. Big Mouth has always been a fascinating show to me just simply for how polarizing it has been over the years. Most people have a strong opinion about it, and it's the kind of thing that you either love or you hate. I was a defender of the show for a long time, and in some ways I still am, especially of those earlier seasons. But Big Mouth's trajectory has been as fascinating to observe as the show itself. It seemingly came out of nowhere, it was everywhere for a long while, and managed to have a fair share of controversies and then sort of burned out into a little blip on the radar. And while a show in decline is nothing new, especially for a platform like Netflix, which is just floundering around and bleeding out piles of money, I think it's time to unpack just what makes the journey of Big Mouth so unique. So let's start at the beginning. If you've never seen Big Mouth, the premise is pretty simple. It's an animated series created by Nick Kroll, and it follows several quirky middle schoolers as they deal with puberty and other familiar coming-of-age tropes. The thing that made the show unique was the introduction of hormone monsters, otherworldly beings that guide the human characters along their puberty journey. Like I said, this thing came out of nowhere, and it had a stacked voice cast, including Nick Kroll, Maya Rudolph, John Mulaney, Jason Mantzoukas, fucking Jordan Peele. Like, I guarantee you're probably a fan of someone doing voice work in here. So the casting and concept were already proving a solid foundation, but I think the show really took off because of its humor and its heart. And I'll say right off the bat that the humor in Big Mouth isn't for everyone. It's clearly derivative of stuff like South Park and Family Guy, and it's super over the top in both its jokes and its visual gags. It is not a show that everyone will like, and I can totally understand why some people are immediately turned off by the humor, especially because many of the characters are children and they're often put in uncomfortable or sexualized situations. But then there's another school of thought in that the show is simply a vehicle for these adult comedians to get really over the top with shit that they normally wouldn't be able to get away with, and that can be just as endearing to some as it is repulsive to others. And lastly, the other big talking point about Big Mouth is its animation style. It's ugly. It is not pleasant to look at, and I would assume that's both an intentional choice and because simple character designs are probably a cheaper option for Netflix to mass produce seasons for this thing. Studio Ghibli it is not. However, I give the animators credit for always going the extra mile when it comes to visual gags and the unique monster concepts and designs. Now, let's talk about the heart of the show that I mentioned earlier. While a lot of Big Mouth is just noise, the earlier seasons managed to actually craft some pretty dynamic character moments with some real life lessons about puberty and sexuality. For example, I think the period episode in season 1 is the best written script of the whole show. One of the main characters, Jessie, gets her period while on a field trip to the Statue of Liberty, and it manages to have a really funny and down-to-earth arc for Jessie as she deals with a situation that every vagina haver has had at some point. And even if it's not a full-blown character arc, there are scenes in here that are really inventive and well done. I still think about the Groove is in the Heart scene where Andrew's mom gets an abortion and meets her husband. It's so trippy and fucking wild and touching in its own bizarre, nuanced way. These are the little moments here and there that make Big Mouth really charming and relatable. Another example of an arc that I think they handled really well is Matthew's. Matthew is the stereotypical bitchy gay, your average RuPaul's Drag Race enjoyer, and he deals with a lot of challenges by having to come out that to his parents, or feeling pressured into sex with other guys at a young age, and even coming face to face with an older gay queen who teaches him that he doesn't have to be so catty and bitchy all the time. Matthew could have easily been a punchline the whole show, but they actually gave him highs and lows and made him likable and relatable, and these kinds of moments are where the show really shines. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for our two main characters, and this is where we run into some issues, especially as the show has progressed over time. The two main characters of this show are Nick Birch, played by Nick Kroll, and Andrew Goldberg, played by John Mulaney. Unfortunately, these two are the most unlikable characters in the whole series, mainly because Nick is kind of a dick and Andrew is a perv and also a dick, and they never grow out of this characterization even after 6 seasons. I think it was supposed to be one of those shows where the whole dynamic hinged on two best friends learning to, well, come of age, but Nick and Andrew never actually seem like friends at any point. They're always fighting over a girl, or their dick sizes, or their parents or something, and it gets really annoying to watch these conflicts get resolved only to be dragged into the same old. And that's the problem with Big Mouth as a whole, I think, because the show doesn't ever age up the characters. They really have no choice but to rehash the same conflicts over and over again. There's no way for you to really progress as a character if you're stuck in middle school. And sometimes they'll try to do inventive stuff, like for example, they started one of the newer seasons with Andrew and Nick at summer camp, and I really thought that was a great idea because it removed them from the tired school setting, but it only lasted for like 3 episodes, and then boom, we're back to Coach Steve being his usual goofy self in a girl's locker room or whatever. And because of the inherent stagnation they've placed themselves in by refusing to age up the characters, which to be fair, that would be really big and challenging because then you'd also have to address what happens to the hormone monsters, and then also the next logical progression would be the main characters actually having sex. I know why they didn't want to go that route, but the only other way for the show to show any progression is to just constantly jump the shark. The show's over-the-top, gross-out humor peaked at Andrew getting caught trying to fuck his cousin while wearing his dead grandma's wig. Like, where do you even go from there? And the fact that this happened, and I can't even tell you what season it was, is really saying something. So I guess that's the main issue here. All of the seasons kind of blend together because by season 5 there is no more character progression. No one learns anything or develops at all, and everything the writers wanted to say has pretty much already been said. So at this point, you should probably just chalk Big Mouth up to a silly show that ran out of steam, like Family Guy or Rick and Morty. At first glance, you'd think the writers are just begging you to not take it all that seriously, but if we dive a little deeper, Big Mouth has been at the center of some of the most online discourse of the last 5 years or so. So just how seriously are we supposed to take it? You know that meme that's like a domino stack and it starts with something completely insignificant and then ends up creating like a really out-of-pocket chain reaction? That's basically what happened when Tumblr banned porn and then everyone migrated to Twitter, and then we got Big Mouth pansexuality discourse. In 2019, Big Mouth introduced a new character to the main cast named Ali, played by Ali Wong. Ali is pansexual. Now, this show has covered everything from periods to pillow fucking and jerking off, so you'd think that the writing of a character with a different sexuality would be a walk in the park for these psychos. But Ali quite literally explains to the class that being pansexual means that she wants to fuck anybody and everybody, and I think this is what most people think it means, but those looking for a more nuanced approach to this topic were not happy. So much so that the writers of the show went as far as to apologize and admit that they missed the mark on Ali's portrayal, even making sort of a meta-reference to their badly written metaphors in a later season. I'm not going to go in depth here because I'm not quite sure I understand the whole thing myself, but what I think didn't land is that the way pansexuality was described brought on some harmful implications that trans people are in some other mysterious third category than the gender they actually are. I'll put some resources in the description if you want to unpack it all. But here's the thing. Is the show trying to be educational then? Like, I don't know. I feel like writers of a different show just would have been like, we're doing this for goofs and gaffs, fuck off, but the fact that the showrunners were admitting fault to their own bad portrayal of a concept means there is thought and intention behind what they've been trying to do so far, and so maybe it does warrant a more serious critique than horny kid show bad. But then you remember that the season finale of this particular series ended with a monster made of poop fighting a monster made of cum. And so therefore, everyone who had been seriously discoursing about pansexuality just a couple episodes prior to this moment looks like a fucking idiot. My point here is that the lines are really blurred with what exactly the bar is for critique of this series, because sometimes it seems like they're trying really hard, and at other times you just look dumb for merely suggesting that. The last point I want to bring up in this same vein is the character of Missy. In 2020, many industries had their own individual reckonings about topics concerning race, representation, and diverse storytelling. The conversation in the animation industry primarily concerned voice actors and whether or not they should be able to portray characters of color. The topic first gained prominence after the documentary The Problem with Apu, which critiqued white voice actor Hank Azaria for his portrayal of a stereotypical Indian American character. Up until 2020, Missy, who canonically has a black dad and a Jewish mom, was voiced by a white actress named Jenny Slate. Jenny departed the role in August of that year, stating that she thought it was permissible to play Missy because of the characteristics that they shared. But at the end of the day, Missy was a black character, and Jenny stated that black characters should be played by black people. This, believe it or not, was a really big talking point for the time. Many people praised Jenny for this move, other people sort of took a no one asked for this approach. But the fact that this was happening at one of the biggest shows on one of the biggest streaming services is at least worth a footnote when we look back at this particular period in time and at Big Mouth's relevance overall. Jenny's departure paved the way for stand-up comedian Ayo Edebiri, who had recently been hired to write for the show, and she eventually took on the role. Side note, Ayo is fucking incredible in The Bear. Please go watch The Bear if you haven't seen it. It's genuinely my favorite thing I watched this year. Anyway, something I found interesting when researching this topic was this quote from Nick Kroll about the role that more diverse voices play in Big Mouth's writer's room. Our writers really have been engines pushing us to tell more nuanced stories about identity, he says. We realize this is a show about different kids, all with their own personal journeys with puberty. And that really shows with Missy's development in the later seasons. Up until season 4 or so, Missy's blackness never really becomes front and center in any of her storylines. But as Missy begins to question her identity and embrace her culture thanks to her cousins played by Lena Waithe and Quinta Brunson. For example, here's one scene that I think is really well done in the voice acting and the dialogue. I'm really hoping it doesn't get claimed because me explaining it doesn't do it justice. Okay, here we go.
I know I'm black.
Then why don't you act like it?
Thank you.
I act like myself.
Stop it, Missy. He's perfect just the way he is.
And you! You!
Going for the kill, Missy!
You better stop stealing our man!
Damn, she was
damn, too far.
jugular.
I liked it.
Missy, that's enough.
I just...
Go to your room.
I just really wanted to show you my new hair.
Everything about this scene feels like it comes from an actual lived experience, and it's such a breath of fresh air. You see why this show is so hard to say anything about? Because you have the highest highs in comedy writing, and at the same time, the only thing anyone remembers is the poop and fart jokes. It sucks. And after all that, seasons 4, 5 came and went, season 6 is out now, and just poof. Nothing. I was in college when Big Mouth came out, and it used to be way more of an event. In a weird way, I had my own coming-of-age moments alongside the show, and I do see a lot of my younger self reflected in some of these really touching and teachable moments. And despite all of the silly exterior, it does seem a lot like these writers are actively committing to bettering themselves and doing important work in regards to storytelling and diversity, so like, why does it seem like Big Mouth is going out with more of a whimper than a bang? And the easiest answer here is to blame Netflix because they seem to be mishandling all of their assets nowadays, especially when it comes to animation, RIP BoJack. But I can't help but wonder, is it Big Mouth's stagnation that made people want to tune out? Did the audience just outgrow the material? Or is there just too much stuff on TV? Whatever the answer is, I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to give me a follow on Twitter and check out my other recent videos. That's all for me, you guys, and I'll see you next time.